Elvis Presley boarded what should have been a routine flight home, but his pilot, Captain Ron Jacobs, noticed something no one else could see, something that made him break protocol and lock the cockpit door. For years he stayed silent, but when he finally revealed what really happened on that final flight, it changed everything. August 14, 1977. Memphis International Airport. The day is almost over, but the heat sits on the runway like a heavy blanket. The air shimmers above the tarmac. Jet engines roar and fade into a low hum. Near the fence line, dozens of fans press their faces to the metal grid. Some hold handmade signs, some clutch records and ticket stubs. They are not screaming tonight. They are just watching, as if they know something is different. Have you ever felt that kind of quiet worry in the air? A white Jetstar 732 waits near a private gate, its silver nose pointed toward the purple sky. Inside the terminal, Captain Ron Jacobs checks his watch. Flying Elvis Presley still makes his grip tighten on the clipboard. He glances at his co-pilot, Mark Hensley, a younger man with tired eyes. Mark has been reading the flight plan, but he keeps looking up toward the glass doors. Crowds smaller than usual, Mark says. Ron shrugs. It's late. People have church tomorrow. They both know that's not the real reason. For months, whispers have followed Elvis everywhere. Weight gain, exhaustion, pills, canceled shows. Ron has heard it all in hangar gossip and late-night radio. Then the doors slide open with a soft hiss. Elvis walks in wearing a loose dark jacket over a simple shirt. No stage jumpsuit tonight. His shoulders look heavy, like each step costs him. There is no big laugh, no playful wink. Just a nod to the security guard and a quiet, "Evenin', fellas." If you were standing there, would you have noticed the change in his face? Elvis is holding a folded, yellowed piece of paper in his right hand. His fingers are wrapped around it so tightly the paper bends at the edges. He never tucks it into his pocket. He never lets it go. As they walk toward the plane, the fans at the fence finally make a sound. Not a roar, just a wave of voices. "We love you, Elvis. Come back to Vegas." A girl no older than 13 lifts a diary above her head. Taped inside is a ticket stub from a Memphis show in 1961. Years later, she will write that his smile looked tired that night. On the stairs, Elvis pauses and turns back toward the fence. For a second, he looks like the young man from the early photos. Then the moment passes. He brings the folded paper up to his lips and quietly whispers something no one can hear. Inside the cabin, the air feels cooler but empty. No guitar cases in the aisle. No loud jokes bouncing off the walls. Sonny West isn't here. No backup singers. Just two security men and a flight attendant named Carol moving between seats. Mark leans toward Ron and mutters, "You ever seen him this pale?" Ron doesn't answer. He is watching Elvis slide into his seat, clutching that letter. The engines start to whine. The runway lights stretch out like a road of tiny stars. The plane begins to move. As the Jetstar gathers speed and lifts into the Memphis dusk, Elvis does something that makes Ron's stomach tighten. He doesn't reach for his seatbelt. Ron hears the first strange sound behind the curtain. The Jetstar climbs smoothly at first, cutting through the warm Tennessee air. The lights of Memphis spread out below like a scattered necklace. Inside the cabin, everything feels still. Too still. Even the usual creak of the overhead compartments seems quieter tonight. At 12,000 feet, the cabin call light flickers. Once, then again. A tiny amber glow in a sea of darkness. Ron glances at Mark. Did he press it? Mark shakes his head. Doesn't look like it. The light flickers a third time, like a heartbeat skipping. Ron can feel the hair on his arms rise. Strange how a small light can feel like a warning. What would you do in that moment? Ignore it, or face whatever was waiting behind that curtain? Ron unbuckles, stands, and slides the cockpit door open. A soft rush of cool air hits his face. The hum of the engines grows louder as he steps into the cabin. Carol, the flight attendant, turns toward him with wide eyes. "Captain, something's wrong." Ron follows her gaze. Elvis is slumped forward, elbows resting on his knees. The folded letter is crushed inside his fist. His shoulders rise and fall in small, shaky breaths. "Elvis," Ron says softly. No response. "Elvis? Can you hear me?" Still nothing. Ron kneels beside him. The closer he gets, the more details strike him. Elvis's face is pale, almost gray around the edges. Sweat beads along his forehead. His lips tremble. The cabin lights flicker, as if the plane itself can feel something isn't right. Then Elvis whispers, barely a breath. "Don't let them see me like this." The words sink into Ron's chest like a weight. It's not fear of pain. It's fear of shame. Fear of being seen weak. How many people carry that same fear, hiding their hurt because they think the world expects strength? Ron swallows hard. "We'll take care of you. Just breathe. All right?" He gestures to Carol to bring water, but Elvis raises a trembling hand, refusing. His fingers are still locked around the letter, knuckles white. Ron glances at it. What's he holding? Carol shakes her head. He wouldn't let anyone touch it. Ron slowly reaches for Elvis's wrist, checking his pulse. It's there but faint, uneven. A cold ribbon of panic runs through him. He whispers to Carol, "Get Sonny. Now." But Carol hesitates. "Sonny's not on this flight, sir, remember? Right? No bodyguard tonight. No familiar presence Elvis trusted. Just a small crew trying to hold together a moment that feels too big." Ron stands, trying to keep his breathing steady. He's supposed to follow protocol, contact air traffic control, report a possible medical emergency, prepare for an immediate landing. But Elvis's words echo in his head. "Don't let them see me like this." Ron grips the seat back. He's torn between the rules that keep everyone safe and the silent plea of a man who has carried the world's expectations for decades. What does a pilot do when compassion and duty collide? A soft tap breaks the silence. The folded letter slips from Elvis's hand and falls to the floor. Ron reaches for it, but Elvis's hand drops heavily onto his wrist. Weak, but deliberate. A warning. Ron nods. He leaves the letter where it is. Mark calls out from the cockpit, voice tight. "Captain, we just hit unexpected turbulence." The plane shakes, lights flicker again, and the overhead bins rattle. Then, a sudden thud echoes from the rear cabin. Low, heavy, like something, or someone, falling. Ron turns sharply toward the darkness. Something is wrong back there. Terribly wrong. The turbulence hits harder at 18,500 feet. The Jetstar shivers as if the sky itself is warning them. Ron grabs the overhead rail and steadies himself while the engines growl beneath the cabin floor. Mark's voice crackles through the intercom. "Captain, we need everyone seated." Ron nods, though he already knows this is more than rough air. He looks back at Elvis, whose breathing is now slower, deeper, uneven. Carol hovers behind him, clutching the armrest of the opposite seat. "Stay with him," Ron whispers. "Don't let him lean forward again." He turns toward the rear cabin, where the thud came from. The carpeted aisle feels too long now, every step tightening something in Ron's chest. The lights flicker as the plane dips and lifts, dips and lifts. At the very back, he finds one of the security men, Thomas, sitting on the floor. His back is against the wall, one hand pressed over his chest. His flashlight rolls slowly from side to side with the movement of the plane. "You all right?" Ron asks. Thomas nods shakily. "Turbulence knocked me off balance. I'm good." But Ron can see he's lying. His face is pale, his breathing shallow. Fear is a contagious thing. Another jolt shakes the plane. The overhead compartments rattle like loose teeth. An oxygen mask sways from its latch. Ron crouches. "Stay seated. I'll be back." Thomas grips his sleeve. "Captain, how's he doing?" Ron doesn't answer. He simply rises and turns away. Halfway up the aisle, another voice calls out softly. "Captain, wait." It's Kathy Westmoreland, the last-minute addition to the flight. She's sitting 2 rows behind Elvis, a blanket over her knees, a small scarf in her lap. One Elvis gave her during a Vegas show back in '74. Ron crouches beside her. "You okay?" Kathy nods, but her eyes are locked on the floor where the folded letter lies. The plane dips again, and it slides an inch toward her shoe. She whispers, "I know that paper." Ron looks at her. "You recognize it?" Kathy nods again, slower this time. "Gladys wrote it. His mother. Elvis kept that letter in a small box at Graceland. I saw it once. Only once." Ron's breath catches. Why would Elvis bring something that personal on a short flight home? What memory had pulled him back to that letter tonight of all nights? Kathy's eyes shine. He only read it when he was scared or lonely. The words sit heavily in the air. The plane shudders again, harder. A suitcase bangs inside an overhead compartment. Someone gasps. The lights momentarily dim, then brighten. Carol calls out, "Captain." His pulse is changing. Ron moves fast. He's at Elvis's side in seconds. Elvis's head leans back now, eyes half closed, breath shallow. The letter still lies untouched on the floor. Ron places 2 fingers against Elvis's neck. Weak, fading. Carol whispers, "Should we radio ahead? Request emergency assistance." Ron hesitates. He knows what the FAA expects. He knows he should follow the book step by step. But Elvis's words echo through him, clear as if spoken again. "Don't let them see me like this. Protocol says one thing. Humanity says another. Which would you choose? Rules? Or a man's dignity?" Mark's voice breaks through the intercom again. "Captain, the turbulence is getting worse, and we're picking up wind shear from the north. We need a decision." Ron grips the back of Elvis's seat. His heart pounds. Another jolt rocks the plane. Elvis groans softly, barely. The sound is thin, fragile. Carol steps closer. "His pulse, sir. It's slowing." Her voice trembles. "We need to land." The stakes rise like a wave crashing inside Ron's mind. If they declare an emergency, the plane will meet flashing lights, medical crews, cameras, and before sunrise it will be on every front page. If they don't, Ron swallows hard. He looks at Elvis's pale face, the letter, the trembling hands. Then he looks out the cabin window. The clouds roll past like gray smoke. "Captain," Carol whispers. Ron straightens his shoulders. Decision made. He turns toward the cockpit. He's about to break the rules. Ron pushes through the cockpit door just as the Jetstar jolts again. The sky outside the windshield is a dark swirl of clouds, the kind that look soft from the ground but feel like stone when a plane cuts through them. Mark grips the controls, jaw tight, eyes flicking between the gauges and the horizon. "Captain," Mark says, "we need clearance to descend. Wind shear's pulling us off course." Ron slides into his seat but doesn't buckle in yet. He looks at the radio panel, then at the small slip of paper taped beside the throttles. Standard FAA emergency steps. His hand hovers over the radio switch. He doesn't flip it. Mark glances at him. "Sir, we need to call this in." Ron shakes his head slowly. "Not yet." Mark stares. "Elvis needs help." "I know." "Then we have to alert Memphis control." Ron's voice is steady, but inside, his thoughts are racing. If we declare an emergency, there will be cameras waiting. Lights. Reporters. He didn't want to be seen like this. Mark's lips press together. He's young, but he knows enough to understand the weight behind those words. "Captain, we could lose him." Ron looks out the glass, watching lightning flicker faintly inside the clouds. "Not if we move now." He reaches forward and does something he has never done in his entire career. He switches frequencies, away from the official channel. Then he blocks the aircraft identification code. Protocol shatters. Mark's voice goes small. "Sir, that's not legal." "It's human," Ron whispers. He lowers the Jetstar to 23,000 feet. Immediately, the turbulence softens, the shaking quiets, the cabin steadies. The plane feels less like a trapped bird and more like a machine finding breath again. Ron gives Mark the controls. "Hold her here. I'm going back." He steps out into the cabin again. The lights glow dimly, trembling with each shift in altitude. Elvis is still slumped, eyes half open. His skin has gone a pale shade Ron has only seen once before, on a passenger who didn't survive a heart attack mid-flight. The memory hits him like cold water. He kneels beside Elvis, ignoring the jolt in his own knees. "Elvis," he whispers, "stay with me." Elvis's lips move, barely. Ron leans closer. "Don't tell Lisa. Not like this." The words come out broken, almost lost in the humming of the engines. But they hit Ron harder than any alarm or turbulence ever could. Not like this. Not weak. Not frightened. Not alone. Elvis presses his hand weakly against his chest, right where the folded letter should be. But the letter is still on the floor, inches from Ron's shoe. Ron picks it up gently. The paper is soft from age, its edges browned. He doesn't unfold it. He doesn't dare. But the moment he touches it, he understands why Elvis held it so tightly. Some memories don't loosen their grip. Not even in the sky. Kathy watches with wet eyes. "It's Gladys's handwriting," she whispers. He always said she kept him grounded. Grounded. That word hurts now. The man who filled arenas feared letting down the one person whose voice he carried everywhere. Ron stands, heart pounding. The engine's shift pitch mark is adjusting heading. The cabin feels colder than before. Carol asks softly, "Captain, are we landing?" Ron answers with a nod. "We're going home." He starts toward the cockpit. But the plane dips sharply, pulling him sideways. An alarm chirps. Lights flash red for half a second. A loose cup hits the floor and rolls. Short bursts of fear stab through the cabin. For a moment, no one breathes. Ron steadies himself on a seatback. "Mark, we're okay." Mark calls out, fighting the controls. "Wind pocket." Already corrected. The alarm fades. The red lights disappear. But something else fills the silence. A faint clicking sound. Repeating. Steady. Mechanical. Ron moves toward it with a sinking feeling. It's coming from the cockpit voice recorder. The machine has captured something. A single line spoken during the dive. A line Ron praised didn't come from Elvis. He listens closely, and the truth hits him like a blow. Whatever that recorder caught changes everything. The Jetstar begins its slow descent toward Memphis, slicing through calmer air now. The engines hum in a steadier rhythm, but the cabin feels heavier than before. Like every breath is shared, every heartbeat echoing the same fear. Out the window, the city lights glow faintly beneath a thin layer of clouds, soft and distant, like a memory you can't quite touch. Ron steps out of the cockpit again, his hands still trembling from the line he heard on the recorder. He doesn't tell anyone what it captured. Not yet. His eyes go straight to Elvis, whose head rests gently against the seatback, mouth open just enough to reveal the strain of each breath. Carol kneels beside him, gently wiping the sweat from his forehead with a cloth. She looks up at Ron. It's getting harder for him to stay awake. Ron nods. "We're almost there." His voice is calmer than he feels. Kathy rises from her seat. She moves slowly, as though any sudden motion might break something fragile in the air. She kneels down beside Elvis, holding the scarf he gave her years ago during a Las Vegas show. She unfolds it and lays it softly over his chest. "He always said Mama liked this color," she whispers. The scarf is a deep, gentle blue. Under the cabin lights, it looks like the evening sky, the same color that hangs over Memphis tonight. Then she begins to sing. Not loudly, not like on stage. Just a soft hum at first, delicate, almost trembling. The melody of "That's When Your Heart Aches Begin" drifts through the cabin like a quiet prayer. Her voice is thin but warm. Elvis's eyelids flutter, and a faint smile pulls at the corners of his mouth. Ron watches, stunned. He's flown rock stars, generals, politicians. But he has never seen a moment like this. Not in the sky, not on the ground, not anywhere. There is something different in the crew now. A shift, a softening. These people weren't hired to be a family. Yet here they are, leaning toward one another, holding their breath together, humming the same quiet hope. How often do we forget that behind every famous name is a body that aches, a heart that breaks, a person who still fears being seen as weak. Elvis opens his eyes for a moment. They're glassy, unfocused, but he sees Kathy. He sees Ron. He sees Carol holding his hand. "Mama," he whispers. "She used to sing that." His voice cracks mid-sentence. Not from pain, but from memory. Ron feels something in his chest twist. He thinks of the folded letter in his pocket. He hasn't opened it, he won't. But he can feel the weight of it through the fabric of his uniform. More weight than paper should ever carry. Mark's voice breaks through the cabin speakers. "We're 3 minutes from touchdown. Weather's clear enough. Prepare for landing." 3 minutes feels both too long and not nearly long enough. The crew moves without speaking. Carol tightens Elvis's seatbelt. Not enough to hurt, but enough to keep him steady. Kathy adjusts the blanket. Thomas and the other security guards shift to brace themselves for descent. Ron rests a hand gently on Elvis's shoulder. "We're bringing you home," he says. The plane tilts slightly as the landing gear drops. A low mechanical groan shakes the floor. The runway lights appear through the window, 2 glowing lines stretching into the darkness. Everyone waits. No one speaks. Not even the engines seem as loud as before. Ron sits beside Elvis, holding the armrest with one hand, steadying Elvis with the other. There's a strange peace settling over the cabin now. Not calm, not relief. Something deeper, like everyone shares the same thought but no one says it aloud. The wheels hit the ground with a heavy thump. Then a second thump. Then the long, slow rumble of rubber meeting asphalt. The Jetstar races down the runway, slowing, 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 until the city lights stop sliding past the windows and the world finally stands still. The moment the plane fully brakes, Elvis stirs. His eyes barely open. His lips tremble. He whispers something so soft Ron has to lean down, almost nose to cheek, just to catch the shape of the words. It's only a few syllables, barely a breath, but they stay with Ron for the rest of his life. The Jetstar rolls to a silent stop near a private hangar, far from the main terminal. The rest of the airport is busy. Baggage carts beeping, engines firing up for red-eye flights. But around this small plane, the world feels paused. The lights above flicker softly on the metal walls, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Ron unbuckles quickly and stands. His knees ache from kneeling beside Elvis for so long, but he barely notices. He turns to Carol. "Open the door." Quietly. She nods, moving fast but careful, as if any loud sound might shatter the fragile calm still floating through the cabin. The steps lower with a hiss of hydraulic air. Warm Memphis night air slides inside, smelling faintly of jet fuel and summer grass. Thomas and the second guard lift Elvis gently. So gently Ron wonders how they learned to move like that. Elvis feels lighter than he should, as if the sky kept some part of him. They wheel him down the aisle, past the fallen scarf, past the seat where he whispered Mama's name, past the place where the folded letter had slipped from his fingers. Ron reaches into his uniform pocket and touches that letter now. He doesn't unfold it. He just holds it against his palm. Outside, the medical team waits with no flashing lights, no sirens. Ron requested privacy. They honored it. For figures in dark jackets step back respectfully as Elvis is lowered onto a rolling stretcher. One of them mutters, "Routine fatigue, right?" Ron nods once. He doesn't trust his voice, because he knows the truth isn't simple. It isn't medical. It isn't a news headline. It's a man breaking under memories the world never saw. As the stretcher rolls away into the hangar, something inside Ron shifts. He feels it, the weight of responsibility, the weight of silence. Some secrets take root the moment they are born. Some never leave. Mark steps beside him. "Sir, what did the recorder pick up?" During the drop, Ron doesn't answer immediately. He stares into the dark where Elvis has disappeared. "It caught a voice," Ron says finally. "Soft, weak, but clear." "Whose voice?" Ron swallows. "Elvis's." Mark waits. Ron lets out a slow breath. He said, "Tell her I tried." The words hang between them like smoke. Tell her I tried. Not a confession. Not an apology. Just a man hoping someone he loved would know he didn't give up. Ron presses a hand against his forehead. He didn't want the world to hear that. Not then. Not like that. So Ron made a choice that night. A choice that shaped the next part of his life. He took the cockpit voice recorder tape. He took the one still photograph Mark snapped during descent. He took the note Elvis had scribbled earlier that day. He locked all three away. For years, he carried them like invisible stones in his pocket. Artifacts no museum would ever display. Secrets no newspaper could print correctly. People asked him for stories, for details, for drama. He never said a word, because the truth wasn't about spectacle. It was about dignity, about a man who didn't want to be remembered in fear. And yet, decades later, Ron finally revealed the one line he kept hidden the longest. The line from the man whose voice still echoed in his memory. And it changed everything. Years passed and the world kept spinning. New songs rose, new stars appeared. New memories pushed old ones into quiet corners. But for Ron Jacobs, that night never faded. It lived in the back of his mind like a soft light he could never turn off. He kept the tape in a small wooden box, the photograph in a sealed envelope, the letter exactly the way Elvis had held it, folded, worn, trembling at the edges. People asked him to speak. Reporters sent letters. A fan club in Tupelo even offered money for any detail from the famous final flight. Ron refused every time, because he knew the truth wasn't a headline. It wasn't a mystery to be solved. It was a moment of human honesty. One man's fear and hope colliding at 23,000 feet. When Ron finally decided to share the story, he didn't speak on a stage or in a studio. He told it sitting at his kitchen table, voice low, hands shaking. Elvis wasn't afraid of dying, he said. He was afraid of disappointing the people he loved. The room fell silent. It always did at that line. Ron looked out the window that day, watching the late sunlight stretch across his yard. Sometimes the strongest voices whisper, he said. And sometimes the greatest legends are the loneliest. His words weren't dramatic. They weren't polished. They were simply true. And they leave us with a question. One that has echoed since the night that Jetstar touched down on Memphis asphalt. In your final quiet moment, what memory would you hold? And who would you protect, even in your weakest hour? A small plaque was later placed at a private hangar wall. No crowd, no cameras. Engraved with one line Ron repeated until the end of his life. Dignity matters most when no one is watching. If the story moved you, share it with someone who still believes legends don't feel pain. These quiet truths remind us that even the brightest stars carry shadows. And if you have a memory of Elvis, or someone you love deeply, tell it below. Stories like that keep hearts alive.